All right. Hello and welcome back to the channel. We are back for our Wheel of Time podcast, starting with New Spring. This is a Patreon member live recording. If you are a Patreon, make sure you're on Discord if you'd like to get in on this while we do it live. But Laura, New Spring.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it.
Was
Come on, you loved it too. Get out of here.
you had said that you had written out like a ton of
Oh my God,
notes.
so much. Uh, I think like where I would want to start is probably why I started with New Spring,
Yeah, yeah.
which so I think like if you come into the books where you're just reading the books and you haven't watched the show at all, New Spring might be a little like I don't know if it would be kind of confusing or not, but as somebody who watched the show to come to the books, like it was perfect. It gives you some new material that like is only touched on really in the show, and I think that it really enhances your understanding of Moiraine and Lan and Siuan as people and who they were before everything starts, like, 18 years later.
Yeah, I think people that have watched the show can definitely go into New Spring first. I know there's like a very vocal group of people that are like, you must read it in publication order. I've never really believed that myself, but I guess I don't know. I think with New Spring, oh, obviously, too, spoilers for New Spring here and spoilers for the Wheel of Time television show. So we probably won't go too much into like the main series, but you know, Eye of the World, etc. But I think some people don't want that Black Aja reveal thing happening too early in the series. But I don't feel like the story is hindered in any way by knowing that going in because
No, I don't either.
it's just kind of, I don't know, honestly, I think that makes things even better because then you go into it and you're like, oh crap, who can we trust? Like
Yeah.
who do we know? What characters are we given names of? And you can start sussing that information out right from the jump, which is actually kind of cool when you think about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I know that it like introduces concepts like the Black Aja really early. It introduces power forged weapons really early, but I think that these kind of give you, well, the reader, a better grasp of things that are coming later on. So that way, when you get to them, you're not like, what is this? Like, it's like, oh, okay, those are source forged weapons.
Yeah, now you know. Now you
Yeah.
know.
And plus, I think it's really nice to see who the three of them are before everything else happens. Like, because when you get into like the main book series, it can be easy to be like, well, they're being really hard on these kids and this and that. But then you see like they've actually already been working on this for like 18 years. The Edmonds Field Five join like
Way
really
late.
far into the
Yeah.
plan. Yeah. And so you see, like, you get a taste of how much searching they're doing, what they're going through as they're searching, and how Moraine and Lan get together, which I think was probably my favorite part of the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because it doesn't happen. And I was expecting it to happen, but then it like doesn't really happen until the very end.
Yeah. Yeah, that
So,
that last scene is kind of like their
yeah.
bonding moment. And it's on the cover of the book, depending which cover you have, but it's like that very beautiful like image of Lan kneeling in front of Moraine, which is
That's the one
probably
I
one of my
have.
yeah, it's one of my
Yeah.
favorite covers, period. But I don't know. I think too, like it getting to see Moraine and Lan in this very different time of their life, their personalities are quite a bit different than they are in the book series as well. And so it's like, I don't know, like it's just it's very wholesome in one
It
aspect, but
is.
also like I had even texted you about this, but I was like, there's some like, I mean, I'm gonna say like spicy moments, even
Yeah,
though it's Not
alluding to spicy.
yeah, Robert Jordan's version of, like, spicy romance moments from Lan, and even Bukama, his, like, Malkiran mentor guy, which is, like, I don't know, like, it's just a lot of fun, I think.
It is. And like we also get to see the world in a different place too.
Mhm.
Because when we enter a new spring, we're coming in kind of at the end of the Aiel War and the dragon being born on Dragon Mount. And so that all happens like really quickly in like the very beginning of the books. And it's just kind of interesting because you get a little bit more time in Tar Valon than you do in the beginning of the books. Like, yeah, you're
Yes.
in Tar Valon in the beginning of the series, but you're really confined inside the tower.
Yeah, yeah. I think too that was another aspect that made me really enjoy New Spring because when I was going through the main series, it's like they talk about like we got to get to Tar Valon. It's this big deal. Like it's a place of safety. We got to get there. And they essentially get everywhere besides there. And I
Anywhere
yeah.
but there.
Yeah. Yeah, so much traveling. And so like it's building up as you're reading the main series and I'm into it and I'm like, okay, like I want to see this location where all the magical ladies live and what this place is like. And I was so excited about that. And then in the eye of the world, like you never get there. And it's just like, oh, okay, well, cool. Glad they planted that seed.
Yeah, it's so like in New Spring, there's a lot of world building that happens within the chapters. So you hear like these much more elaborate descriptions of what the city of Tarvalon looks like. And then, oh, he's back.
Even the customs
Yeah.
of like deference between the different channelers and how that works within the White Tower.
So when you talk about that, like we even get like a power vacuum right up front.
Yeah.
We get to see how volatile the tower can really be because when you're introduced into the main series with Siuan as Amyrlin, everything seems like more stable. But in New Spring, there's multiple. But there they go into the rain. Um, but in New Spring, we go through two different Amyrlins right away.
Yes. Yes.
Like Tamra dies, and then almost immediately after, the next woman dies. And a lot of this plays a role in how this whole journey to the dragon is built.
Yes.
Because you don't realize it, like, even in the show or the books, but the two of them were not supposed to be doing this.
No. No.
They took this on themselves.
Yeah, and that's I mean, I think if you go to the show, that's a huge aspect where you're not quite sure what the big deal is. Like, why does it matter that they're looking for the Dragon Reborn? Why is Swan trying to keep this a secret? Like,
Right.
you kind of know, but it's just kind of like a background question. And it makes you ask yourself, well, what's the big deal? Why didn't Swan just be like, all right, ladies of the White Tower,
All right, girlies.
Dra- all right, gals, Dragon Reborn is here. We're going to follow him because I say so. I'm the Amyrlin. Bing, bam, boom. It is what it is.
That's a really excellent point to make.
Yeah.
This really sets the stage for why it does not go down that way and
Yeah.
how divided the tower really is, how deeply volatile the politics are. Like, they don't talk about how the blues have beef with the reds, the whites, and the yellows in the
Yeah.
show. Like, that's not talked about, but in New Spring, they don't necessarily lay it all out, but like he writes about how the reds and the blues have like a historic animosity for one another. They have problems with the whites, but they're not really sure why because that's like white beef with blue. And then with the yellows, it's like people messed up 100 years ago and everybody's still mad about it. And like
Yeah.
understanding those kinds of dynamics between the Ajas themselves also lends like better understanding and more, I would say, more fleshing out of what we see happen later on and why Moiraine doesn't trust anybody and why even Siuan doesn't trust anybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the political aspect between the Ajas is, I mean, it's somewhat fascinating because, again, like, you get to the White Tower and it's supposed to be this, place of safety, and once you start to learn how the currents are below, like, surface level and you really get into the politics of the White Tower, you start to learn this place is not a place of safety in any sense of the way that you could originally see Tar Valon and the Aes Sedai. And yeah, it's politically one of the strongest places in the known world, but that doesn't mean that it's not ripe full of political machinations and undercurrents, and then on top of the different ajas having different loyalties and animosities towards each other, you've also got just like this people beefing with, different Aes Sedais
Everybody's
having,
beefing. I love
yeah,
it.
yeah, and so it's like even if you look outside of the whole aja thing, there are people that just don't get along with other people. Black Aja question marks, like, why are all of these women dying? Which for me, like, I love a good mystery. So like when that part is introduced, I'm like, oh, I'm hooked. Like I'm in.
Right. Plus, like, we do get an early introduction to Cadsuane,
Yes.
and it leaves a monster sized question mark right next to her name. And it's like, well, we're done talking about that for now. Uh, which, like, again, if I hadn't seen this show or didn't have this, like, kind of strange knowledge of a lot, but a little all at the same time, that might have been kind of like, oh, well, she's just a fleeting character. And then it could have been like, oh, surprise, she's back.
Yeah.
But introducing to her super early and in that little speech that she gives Moiraine and what is it? Who's the other? I can't remember the other woman. It's close to my name, but not Laura. And when Cadsuane's talking, she's going on about how there hasn't been a channeler like her in 1,000 years. Nobody like, what is it, like Melon? Uh,
Yeah, I know who you're talking
yeah,
about.
I
All
should
of
have
these
written all the
Aes
names
Sedai
down.
names are
I should have
just
written them all down.
I know who you're
Uh,
talking about though.
so then how there's nobody in 600 years next to these next two women, and that Moiraine and Siuan are eventually, like, in 50 years going to be the
Top
first
dogs.
rank. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she kind of goes on about how that shouldn't be happening. And it's, she's
I
making,
love Cadsuane.
she's like, whatever, if I don't catch you in your room, I'm going to beat you up. Like, you're going to regret that. And I think, like, the really perfect way that Moiraine talks about Cadsuane is she's like, the woman is formidable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's like a really, like, holistic way to describe Cadsuane in one word.
Yeah. I
But then,
think
like, I've got
she's
my eyeball on those other two women that they ran into with Cadsuane.
yeah. And because isn't that like those chapters shortly after that is when Moraine and Swan Sanche reconnect because at that point Moraine had fled out the tower. They wanted to install
Yeah.
her as the queen of Kyrian, and she was like,
No, no.
"Deuces, I'm out of here." So Moraine takes off and then runs into Cadsuane, and then runs into Swan Sanche, who has also fled the tower looking for Moraine to explain, like, there's been all of these deaths in the White Tower, and Swan Sanche is scared out of her mind. Like, she's crying and just like, I had to find you. I had to tell you this information because it's not good. Things are really, really bad.
Like, when we talk about Moraine, um, I think that New Spring is really imperative for people to read to learn about who she was coming into this. Like, because when, like I said, when you see her in the main series, she seems very like business.
Yeah.
Everything's about business. And in New Spring, it's not. We spend part of it with her as an accepted, like, we find out about who she is, what she enjoys, like, like how her and Swan like playing pranks.
Yes.
But she's so curious and idealistic at this age.
Yeah.
And you know, we get to meet the side of her that was raised as a noble, and it's really, I think, touching to see like how generous she is as a noble, where she wholly believes that nobility should be charged with making sure that their people are okay, and
Yeah.
how that can be a balance. And she's so determined, like, with how you were talking about where she was like, yeah, I'm not gonna take the sun throne, I gotta go. And she really kind of like puts the pieces in place to get herself out of there. And even when that kind of falls through, she still leaves anyway.
Yeah.
She just absconds in the night.
Yeah. I think this other aspect to her as well, because in the earlier books and even the show for that matter, she's very cutthroat. Like she is very, like you said, all business, just
Yeah.
like one woman mission all the time, totally driven. And then you see her as this almost like very generous and kind, and she really feels for the people that she encounters, especially of the lower classes, when she's meeting all of these people out in the world, especially these women who had the babies, where she's going out and doing the searching, and she's like
Yeah.
handing out money and stuff
100
like
gold
that.
crowns for every baby.
Yeah.
Like, and like when she's doing it, she runs into that woman at the first place that her and Suwan go to take down names. And she's like, yeah, this baby is obviously closer to a year than a newborn.
Mhm.
And she's like, whatever, the tower can afford the extra crowns, and just wrote the woman's name down so she'd get him anyway, because she saw that that woman was really struggling within the depths of poverty, and she's like wasting away to be able to take care of her kid. And those are the kinds of things that, like, I don't think we see a lot of in Moraine later on,
No.
because, like we were saying, it's all business by that point.
Yeah. I think too, I liked this, kind of like, almost like this odd couple relationship between her and Swan Sanche when they're out in the world, because
Their
they're
relationship out in the world is incredible. It's like, oh, I love
Well,
it.
they both have their strengths and weaknesses. Like,
Yeah.
Moraine is going about things as she knows how to do things as a noble, but she's never really been out in the world outside of this class system. And so she walks into danger just not even thinking about, like, the ruffians and the thieves and, like, the worst type of people out there, and Swan is, like, bringing her back down to earth and like, what are you doing? Are you trying to get yourself killed? And then you see that kind of flipped when they do make it to the palace of, is it Idashar Palace? The Idashar Palace, is that right?
The one in Chachin.
The final
Yeah.
location. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, in the Borderlands.
Yeah, when they get there and then she's in with society, she's just like in her element, wheeling and dealing, knowing exactly what to say to who and what to do to be perceived how she wants to be perceived. And Swan is, for lack of a better metaphor, a fish out of water. And so
As uncomfortable as a pikefish out of water.
yes, exactly.
Uh, I think that they provide like this really excellent balance between each other in navigating the
Yeah.
world. Like, we have Moraine, who knows how to run in circles of society, and we have Sawan, who knows how to run in circles on the street.
Yeah.
And like, So I know that we've laughed about how many people do not like the dressmaker chapter,
Yeah.
but I think going to the dressmaker was kind of a really good way to put those differences of how they balance each other out into like a better highlight because
Yeah.
we have Swan who's like, yeah, girly, I need something cheaper
Mhm.
and it better be modest.
Right? And then she
Moraine takes her aside and she's like, you better knock this out right now.
do not say a word to the dressmaker about this. And Swan's like eyes bulging out of her head at like low cut and like,
Yeah.
oh God, it's so funny. I don't know, it's so wholesome in a way. And I mean, sometimes like the folksiness of the story isn't quite my thing, but in this context of this chapter, I'm just like, it's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good.
It really took like a lot of wholesome writing and made it really enjoyable to read.
Yeah.
And even like we get a we get a look into Swan that we will never get in the books. Like I'll be honest, I didn't realize how much extra the show gave her. So
Okay.
I've been kind of shocked reading the books where I'm like, where is Swan at? And I'm
Right.
like, okay, I guess just nowhere. She's just in Tar
Yeah.
Valon. But here we even get like little blurbs that are from her perspective. And we learn, like where she came from, what she's really good at, like where her strengths and some of her weaknesses lie. Like she's incredibly intelligent. She's great at pattern recognition. She can puzzle anything out. Anything that they're taught, she immediately absorbs. Whereas
Yeah.
like you have Moraine, who it takes a little bit longer. But then Swan struggles more to like pick up those,
Like social cues.
yeah, the
Yeah.
decorum of high
Yeah.
society that she, and like Maureen makes good points to Swan at times where she's like, you can't wear bad, like cheap dresses because you need to look an Aes Sedai. They don't want you out in these streets looking poor.
Right. And Swan's like, "No, but if you're out in the streets and, like, the bad part of town flaunting your wealth, you're going to get robbed."
Right.
It's good.
It is. And we also get to see that Swan doesn't actually have ambition to be Amyrlin.
Oh, yeah, that's a
That's
great
not
point.
at all what she wants.
No.
Swan wants to be like out swashbuckling in the world,
Yeah.
like doing stuff out there, going on adventures, seeing the whole world. And then, and Moraine wants something a little bit more stable. And then it's like, well, the wheel's like, time to do a switcheroo. We're going to make you stay and you go.
Right. That's such a good point because, like, as a theme for the story in general, and also something that I think the show has tried to kind of put a little more emphasis on than the books, maybe, is that what you see in New Spring specifically is how much sacrifice not just Swan and Moraine have made, but also Lan.
Oh, so much.
Because it's,
Honestly, all three of them.
yeah. And I think that's like, man, like it's almost tragic to think about how Swan ends up Amerlin, but what would have things looked like if these three, if Moraine, Swan, and Lan could be working together the way that they wanted to and out, being fulfilled while doing all of this dragon stuff all
Right.
together. And it's like it's so tragic, but I don't know. And I mean, even with Lan, he's so, gosh, gruff and like demoralized over not being able to, restore Malkir to its, glory and like what that entails. And so he's got this like oath that's been beaten into him by Bukama. And then Moraine comes around and she's like, okay, I've got this idea. How about like you've sworn this oath to restore Malkir and beat back the shadow, but how about like you help me beat back the shadow, but in a different way. And that's how she kind of gets her claws into
Yeah.
him. And it's so Moraine. It's so
I
Moraine.
I love that they're their adventure with each other starts out by her stalking him,
Yes.
and then him figuring it out and throwing her in a pond.
Mhm.
Like, their travels together in this book he's he's spending the whole time trying to figure out if she's actually an Aes Sedai, and she's spending the whole time playing pranks on him for not showing her the respect of an Aes Sedai.
It's so good. I
It
think
is. But
I
like, oh, go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, I think another one of these aspects that I think is really important to see in New Spring is, especially if you're someone who really likes Rand and also likes Lan, is in like the main series, there is this relationship between Lan and Rand where he kind of mentors Rand. And Lan doesn't always do the best job, but he's giving Rand the same advice that Bukama was giving him.
Right.
So you kind
Yeah.
of get to see this like passing down of knowledge where, it might not be the right words or the right actions that Rand needs to hear at that time, but it still makes things kind of like heartfelt where like he's approaching things in the only way that he knows how. And I kind of like that theme of like knowledge and just mentorship being passed down. And, like Lan's backstory is actually like really cool.
It
So,
is. It is. One other thing that I wanted to touch on when we talk about like Moraine and Siuan together is that we find out how this like kind of rivalry with Elaida, where it may have
ah,
started.
so good. I love Elida's entrance into New Spring.
Yeah, she's there early on, and then there's like a lot of friction with her in multiple points of the book. But this beef that Elida has with the two of them goes back 2 decades.
Yeah.
We like that's what you find out in the book. And turns out, I think I just really like the actress in the show, which was why I held on to hope that she would be not a monster. But then like you get the idea in the books that like she's just kind of overtly cruel and obsessed with power no matter
Yeah.
how she can get it. And that is really what kind of leads into the friction between them.
Yeah. And too, I have to wonder if like I think maybe she's a little bit jealous of Moraine and Siuan having like such a close friendship and like not being a part of that. And also being maybe jealous of Moraine and her status before she was an Aes Sedai because Moraine is actual royalty. And think Elida is like the daughter of like a very lesser noble house and what like Mirandy or something. Don't quote me on that. I might not remember that correctly, but I don't know. Like it's a weird dynamic with Elida and like the beatings and stuff like that. It's like
Yeah.
she's cruel, but also like there's that question mark of like the three oaths thing, because you can't use if you're an Aes Sedai and you're not a part of the Black Aja, you can't use the one power as a weapon.
Right.
And we see how closely Elida like skirts on that line of how is this possible?
Right. And there's also I think what kind of really like crystallizes the beef for Elida is that she gets a penance for what she did, but it's for helping them cheat on their test for the Shaw. So that throws in kind of like this cloudy, like what's happening? Was I mean, would you rather admit that you're doing that than being like, yeah, I just like torturing young people?
Right. Right. Oh, it's wild. I don't know though, like I think if anyone is curious more about this dynamic, like what makes a light a tick, there's so much in New Spring as well to kind of like clue you in to what what makes her act the way she does.
I mean, I think as far as like what I've seen from Elaida so far, what book am I on? The Dragon Reborn. Um, I think that the show does a pretty good job of representing her.
Yeah, me too.
Like the pomp and the aggression and things like that. I do think that they do a really good job portraying that in the show. And because I'm so in love with uh I just love the actress so much. I can't get over
Yeah.
her from The Expanse. So, but I am actually like super curious how Elida's story kind of opens up in the books
Mm.
specifically because I feel like it'll be different than it is in the show. I mean, don't
Yeah.
tell me. I'm not going to look at your face right now, so I can't
I mean,
read it
like,
on your face.
yes and no, yes and no. So it's like, yeah, I won't spoil anything for you, but I don't know. I think Elida is just she's one of these characters, whether you find her like horrible or if you find her entertaining or if you find her absolutely horrendous, but also entertaining in a way. Like, I think she's one of these characters that is able to so aggressively push the plot that it makes her just like a fantastic character to read. Where, like,
Yes.
she is just, like when she comes into things, there's always something happening, and there's always just, the theatrics of Elida are just so enjoyable if you like theatrics. You can still hate her,
I
but
mean, yeah, she does exact torture in this book, which isn't exactly like the greatest entry point to have as a
right.
character. But I do like that she kind of like keeps that same energy all the way through.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
but I do have to wonder at times, like, what got her really going on the two of them? Is it jealousy? Is it like just flex and power and then they didn't respond correctly?
I think it's a combination of many things because Elida, for the most part, is pretty high in the one power. Like, she's a very strong channeler.
Yeah,
And she's older than Moiraine and Swan, so maybe she thought she was gonna be top dog, and then here walk in these 2 young novices, and she's like, "Oh, shit," you know?
right.
And then not only that, but maybe she thought, "Oh, hey, like, I have status out in the world, Moiraine comes into the tower." Maybe she thinks she's gonna BFF with Moiraine. Moiraine was like, "Woman, I don't have time for you because, like, I am only here for Swan Sanche's attention, not you. Goodbye." So, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess you could theorize a lot of things.
I don't either, but speaking of like Moraine and Swan's relationship, it is much more like actual relationship versus just I don't know, in the main series, there's not a whole lot of talk about it just in
Yeah.
general. But in New Spring, we've got like Moraine getting super jealous, uh, being worried about what Swan's gonna be doing with that guy
Mhm.
at the palace, and they're both like, I don't know. I wouldn't say they're like helicoptering each other, but
A little bit.
a little bit of that,
Yeah.
just a little bit of helicoptering. And I think that they're like, it's not necessarily fully said that they're in a romantic relationship, but they're always like sleeping in each other's beds. And, there's
It's
a
full
lot there that feels like this is a definite check mark of yes.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like some people don't catch it, but I think I think a lot of the people who don't catch it either read the books at a very young age, and so, like, it just goes, like, right over the head,
Mm,
or you're, like, very heterosexual and just, like, "Oh, like, they were roommates,"
yeah.
you know?
Cognitive dissonance makes an excuse.
Yeah, or yeah, something like that, but, like, when I read it, I was like, "Oh, okay," like, there's lines where she was like, she loved Swan more than anyone, and it's like, and then they kissed. It's like,
Then they went and bought dresses.
yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I think it's such a journey too. Like you're all over out in the world. But was there a location or anything that really stood out to you?
I would say,
Plot
like I
point?
said earlier, I would say like the world building of Tar Valon did, but it was also nice to spend a lot of time up in the Borderlands
Yeah.
because you get a much better feel for what the culture, like the cultures are like up there. And things are very different. Like, in fact, it's so different that people in the Borderlands kind of believe that people from the South are soft.
Yeah. Yeah. I see. Oh, that was one thing with the show where I know that they don't have a ton of time to do like a ton of exposition, but when they were up in Faldara in season 1, there was so much that I was hoping to get where it was just like we're just like glazing right over that and on to the next thing. But the fact that like they talk about how in the Borderlands, like how susceptible they are to shadow spawn coming down from the blight and attacking is just wild. And so
Yeah.
like any major city in the Borderlands, like fully lit all the time, lights on at all times, because as soon as it gets dark, like those fades are lurking about and like the Trollocs are there and it's just like it's so militarized in a way that like
Yeah.
every single person who lives in one of these cities is fully on guard at all times. And that's why they have such a different culture because like they want to be prepared to die at any second and that makes them really relish the small moments of life in between. But we do get that scene between Lan and Melindra in the show that kind of touches on
Yeah,
that.
it does kind of touch on it. Like, I feel like maybe that might have been a little bit influenced by New Spring.
Yeah.
Um, but like you see that anti-shadow carried in all the way to the laws. Like, there's no mask. There's
Yes.
full-time lamplighters. You
Yes.
know, they really operate their entire society around guarding against the blight.
Mhm.
And that's not something that even happens in the South. Hell, in the South, half the people there think that this is all a fairy tale.
Yes. Yeah, it's like,
It's,
"Oh, Trollocs.
you
What
know,
are
it's like
those?"
very much screaming how, you know, people in the South in A Song of Ice and Fire think that White Walkers are a fable as well.
Right, right. Yeah.
And like, we don't get a whole lot of like, there's definitely like aspects of the shadow introduced, but I don't think New Spring really delves into that too much and instead like focuses more on kind of world building and character building with like the added bonus of backstory arcs.
Yeah. Yeah. I think with, I'm trying to think. So, like, it's mostly we've got so main 3, Moiraine, Swan, Lan, but then we've also got, like, Rain, this guy, or he's like question mark dark friend or not dark friend, this dude,
Roin.
Ryan, Royn, whatever his
Yeah,
name is, and then Bukama, who's
I
stand-up
love
dude.
Bukama.
I love him, love him. I would love for the show to do a flashback, like a very Lan-centric episode, I think would be incredible, but
It would be.
and then we've also got like so many different Aes Sedai sprinkled in. Cadsuane, Elaida, and then,
And a
the
lot of them die too in this book.
yeah.
Yeah. There's a number of Aes Sedai that die. And like the shadow focus in this book is not the creatures and the direct, like, you know, generals of the shadow. It's like how the dark friends operate.
Yeah. Mhm.
And Anybody could be a dark friend. Like the ending of the book came on so quick. I was like, whoa, what's happening? I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, everybody's dying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that
The end of the
ending was
book is
rough.
wild.
Mhm.
Like that.
Lan running down the stairs trying to get to Bukama. Oh
Ugh.
god.
Moraine trying to save um oh God, what's that the teenage girl,
Oh,
his Carnea's daughter.
yeah, I know who you're talking about. I don't
The
remember the
one
name though.
oh my God,
The
can you
one that she's
imagine
trying
if your
to
ex
get to
tried to make
marry.
you marry her daughter?
That's
Oh, I was like,
wild.
what is going on here?
Inappropriate. Robert
So
Jordan,
inappropriate.
who hurt you? Who hurt you?
But it's like, we get those dynamics that also help build out the culture of the Borderlands, like his dynamics with her and how much
Mhm.
power she wields. And, then we get that his friend's a dark friend trying to hinder him at every turn.
Yep.
And Lan's just, he ends up being like really boxed in. Like, he, at the end, you see it where all throughout the books, like I do love that we started like opening chapter is land chapter,
Mhm.
and I love that. And it like kind of gives some world building to the Aiel War. But we spend a lot of the books like in Land's head where he's, processing through, he's still working through like Malkiar's fall and the duty that's on his shoulders, and how like it doesn't feel like he doesn't want to lead people into the blight to die.
Right.
That's a big thing for him. And he really just, I don't know, he wants to be a one man show.
He's got big time survivor's guilt, even though like he
Yeah.
doesn't even remember his life being in Malkier. Like he was smuggled out as a toddler, newborn maybe. I don't very young. He was a baby.
Like he talks about how he doesn't lead Bukama. Bukama just is, he makes it into this like, well, he's there and he chooses to participate. I'm not telling him what to do kind of situation.
Yeah.
And it really like continues to flesh out how he feels about the burden of the duty of being the king of Malkier after it's been swallowed by the blight.
Mhm. Was there any other topic that you were definitely wanting to cover before we wrap things
uh
up?
you know I love how the weave wheels, how the weave or the wheel weaves as it wills. And I think there's so many moments of that in this book. Like this is the book where we take that theory like to a 10.
Okay.
So Lana Moraine, that should not have been a thing. He doesn't want to be a warder. In fact, he didn't even, at one point in the books, he talks about how he doesn't believe that they actually ask, that all they do is take,
Yeah.
like that they just take warders at will.
Yeah.
But
That's see,
yeah,
I think this aspect of being a warder, like in the show, it's very like, like I would die for her. I'm nothing without her. Not in all cases, but in many cases, it's like just these very loyal men. In the books, there's this other element of like this is a little messed up. Like this is it's a bit off.
and like even almost all the way up to the end, that was not a plan for him. In fact, he was anti being a warder.
He's like anti Aes Sedai and
Yeah,
anti
he really
Kyrian
is.
Aes Sedai.
Yeah, especially anti-Kyrian and Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
But we get to that point where like there's that, I don't know, that final scene on the walkway at the palace, and that
Mhm.
in itself is what pushes him into agreeing to accept this bond.
Yeah.
And it's like you see that the wheel is putting the pieces together for Rand well before he's born.
Mhm.
like, and making sure people get to the same places where they need to be together to run into each other or somehow connect.
Yeah,
I loved it. Mm,
just good stuff.
it
Yeah,
is.
I mean, what did it take to get Moraine and Lan to run into each other, to get Swan Sanche on the Amyrlin Seat, to get Moraine out in the world, invested in this search, in this hunt? Like, every single piece had to fall into place for by the time, like, we show up in Eye of the World, and it's like yeah, like, the wheel really it was really spinning
It
there.
was. It was really spinning in that time. One thing that I think about that always comes to mind is by the time Moraine finds Rand, it's been like 18 years. And granted, we have the baby bounty,
Yeah.
and that gives like the tower a ton of names, a ton of people. Does that mean that like Tam Althor somehow got a name on that list, or was it just happenstance that she walked into the three rivers or the two rivers?
Oh.
Because it's like we have the setup that there's the baby bounty headhunting list
Mhm.
and that she does eventually find Rand, but I
I
don't know, are those like connected or was she well past the list at that point?
I think she was well past the list. So it kind of just it essentially ends on Moraine and Swan are pretty much the sole survivors of anyone who knows of this prophecy and anyone who
Absolutely.
knows that there's a baby who was born in this time frame. And then they also come to find out the shadow also knows because all of the women who knew from the White Tower get killed. And so this is why they have, keep it a secret. Nobody else knows, and why her and Swan have to distance each other because if they're seen in cahoots, then
Everybody's
they're
gonna
both a
know.
threat. Yeah, they're both a threat to the Black Aja, to the Dark Friends, etc. But I think by the time she gets to the two rivers, at this point, she's just looking for kids, for not little boys, but like teenagers of a certain age. And any type of, I guess, kind of like miraculous things happening because as we see in New Spring, there is it New Spring? I feel like there is where like there's these unexpected events of people somehow miraculously surviving a fall
Yes, I
or
actually was gonna talk
yeah,
about this next.
yeah, which is very cool because you see that come up later on in the main series, specifically the Dragon Reborn, where like Taviran things happen and male channelers, there's this kind of like question of like unexpected survivals or just like kind of like almost supernatural things that she's like trying to clock out in the
Right.
world.
So there are some things that are kind of like you kind of passively learn about the universe in New Spring, and one of them is that male channelers, regardless of when the onset of channeling happens, seem to have this really exaggerated luck. And so
Yeah,
when you hear about men with these high rates of luck, then it's kind of like a flashing point to like we might have a channeler on our hands.
right.
And it made me think about like the warder bond in itself, and if Lan has all this luck, does he have like channeling? Not necessarily that maybe he can tap into it, but like something is going on in
I
there.
don't see like that's really interesting because like I know Lan is also familiar with the flame and the void and like some of these other things. I don't know where Robert Jordan was going with Land's luck, to be honest. Like if maybe he thought at some point, like, we might make Land a channeler, maybe. But I don't
Always
know.
set that stage. I mean, if not, he's just got luck.
Yeah, he's just a lucky guy. What can
Yeah.
I say?
But I do think that like in New Spring, it does come across as though like they know the dragon is male.
Oh, yeah.
Like, they know, because she's like, "We can ignore these girls on the list, we just need to find baby boys."
That was one of the things that a lot of people were really shocked by in the show. I mean, me included, because we get that cold open in episode 1 of season 1, and she's like, "We don't know if it's a boy or if it's a girl." And I was like, "The what?"
You do know. You do
You
know.
you trust me, you know, Maureen. But I think they were just I'd heard that they were just looking at it from, like, after so much time, like, maybe this is distorted and they really don't know. But it is what it is. That was a
Or
choice, but
trying to keep the audience guessing.
yeah, I think that too, because if you haven't read the books, it's a little bit more of like, "Ooh, a mystery."
You know, when I first watched season 1, I really thought it was gonna be Egwene.
Yeah, because
I
she is
really
the
did.
first yeah, you see that she's a channeler, like, right off
Yeah,
the jump,
and she's, like, the one who's excited to go.
right? Plot twist. It's the 7-foot redheaded man
Who
who
didn't
looks
wanna go.
who didn't wanna go. Yeah. Was there anything else on your list that you wanted to touch on?
Uh, you know, these aren't, like, necessarily moments, but there are all these, like, little things that are in this book that I haven't seen yet in the others, which is, like, we get a lot of time with, like, the Ogier buildings and
Yeah,
understanding, like, how the Ogiers build things and, like, the flow with the environment and
yeah.
nature and everything around it. We also, like, girl, what are slipper punishments? That's insane. Insane.
Are you talking about in the White Tower, how many people get
Yes.
spanked?
Oh my
Ro
god. Okay, like
Robert
spanking and
Robert
slipper.
Jordan has a spanking thing.
He does.
It's
It's
it's a
I was
choice.
like, what 22-year-old is gonna let somebody spank them as a punishment? Like, come on,
Madam.
madam, remove your hands.
Yeah. I don't know though. I think also, like, the one big aspect that I do wanna touch on is that now we're starting to see, like, how and why the Red Aja is so powerful because, like, as Moraine and Swan are out in the world, like, there are many male channelers out in the world. And so then you start to see this program come to fruition with the Red Aja, like, later as time goes on, because this becomes a big thing for, like, the Red Aja to kind of, like, step into I wanna say kind of, like, into a more powerful position in the White Tower in terms of, like, they have such a large job that they, for the most part, really excel in, where, like, the Blues are kind of off just doing their own thing, but the Reds really work together as a unit, and that does make them very politically strong because they are such a tight-knit group for the most
Yeah,
part. Whereas, like, a lot of the other Ajas, like, yes, they do vote together and stick together, but the Reds more so feel like a very, like,
you
tight
know,
unit.
it's funny because, like, when when I was talking about Cadsuane talking about, like, less and less powerful channelers, fewer and fewer channelers, really the Reds and their eugenics principles
Yes.
are the cause of the
Yes.
loss of all of this, because by, euthanizing any man who can channel, you're literally cutting the out of genetic lines. Like,
Yeah.
and you don't let Aes Sedai have children, and you guys wonder why you're depleted. It's
And on
like
top
all
of
the
that
information's
yeah.
there, but they can't seem to get those pieces together.
Right, and then on top of that, like, some of the rituals within the White Tower are so incredibly dangerous, where it's like, how many Aes Sedai go into the arches and don't come out? And then you've got the gentling of all of the male channelers, and then you're wondering why is the White Tower shrinking in terms of population,
Because
because
they get rid of
fewer
2/3 of the channelers.
exactly, exactly. They're not
Like,
not having
they're like, get
kids.
out of here.
They're not having kids. They're dying in the arches. They are gentling and getting rid of the genetics. Like it's just like
Yeah.
there's so many different things. And then on top of that, there are dark friends and they're the Black Aja exists and are in the tower, like running game. And so like that is the big aspect of New Spring where it's like, okay, is it this question of like the chicken and the egg situation? When was the White Tower infiltrated? And is it because it was infiltrated by the Black Aja that all of these bad policies started happening? Where like women die so easily in the arches. And as we see in New Spring, like there are Aes Sedai outside of the arches like channeling into them to show like I don't know, it's like a VR situation. They channel into it and then within the arches they're presented with different obstacles that they have to get out of. And so, like, there are women creating these scenarios that are killing the accepted that go in. And so, like,
Yeah.
there's another question mark. It's like, is that the Black Aja's doing, or is it just a bad policy? Or is it a bad policy because the Black Aja like have made it normalized? And so, like, I
Yeah,
don't know. Like,
there's a really big chicken and egg situation happening
yeah,
there.
and I think
Like,
I love
you
it.
guys, because I was, while I was reading, I was like, why can't they find a different way to do this? Like, they're
Right.
like, oh, she disappeared in the arches. Well, we'll send her stuff
Yeah.
to her family.
Oh, back it up, send him, yeah.
But
W
like also, when Moraine goes through the arches, and then like we get nods to characters we're gonna see later, like Shiriam
Mhm.
and Leanne and stuff. They talk about how that same week, another girl, Ellen, she doesn't come out of the arches.
Right.
But also they sent like 10 other girls home.
Yeah.
They were like, get out of here, not powerful enough.
Mhm. Yeah. It's interesting. I think the White Tower is just such a fascinating location and, like, thought experiment
Yeah.
in terms of, like, does power corrupt, or is it something different, or is it just kind of like a situation where as time went on, they got further and further away from their original purpose, and that's why things kind of start to fall off, and you never quite find out the answer, but I think as an institution itself, like, very cool, engaging, fun to read about, fun to learn about, but also it's slightly I mean, it's just kind of awful. Like, it's just kind of this place where it's like a lot
It is.
happens where you're
I wouldn't
like,
want to go.
"No,
Hell
no."
no.
And I love, like, this question, like, in the fandom. It's like, if you had any type of affiliation in the Wheel of Time and you got, like, dropped into this world, what would you wanna be? And a lot of people are like, obviously, Aes Sedai because they hold so
Wilder.
much power. Yeah, Wilder,
Wilder all
through and
day.
through, through and through. I mean, I'm not gonna say my choice because I don't want to spoil you.
Okay.
I don't wanna
Because I'm
give
choosing
anything
out of what I know is available.
right. And so, like, I think I would be a channeler, but I don't think I would want a warder because if that person dies, then, like, I don't wanna go mad and kill myself. No, thank you. Like, I'll rely on myself.
Well,
But
and in the book, like in New Spring, it makes it seem like only the green really have warders, that a lot of the other Ajas, like a lot of Aes
take it or
Sedai do
leave it.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that the whites, like, do not the same way as the reds do. The whites also do not have warders.
Yeah. You know what we need to do it. We should do it. I've done the Aes Sedai test where it tells you your Aja, but
Ooh, I gotta do
I
this.
think we should do it live one day.
Yes, that would be so fun. I feel like I would come back as a blue or a white.
I ended up white last time I took it.
I
I
feel like I'm too ACAB to come back as red.
I am always on the border between gray and white. Like I've taken it multiple times and there's many different tests, but I'm always either
Oh,
gray
yeah, we
or
should
white.
definitely do those live. Everybody else who's watching us should do it too, because I'll wanna know what everybody came back as.
Yeah, let's do it next week when
Okay.
we record. So, we'll do that, and then that'll give as people are listening, that'll give them time to do it themselves.
Yes.
But I think we'll wrap it up here. Before we end things, I just want to say make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. These longer videos it's just a thing on YouTube, but like longer videos do not do as well on YouTube. So if you do like these, please make sure you like the video because the algorithm just hates anything that's like over 20 minutes. But also, big shout out to my three newest channel members, which is Sassy D, Freya Stark, and Mr. Cook, the
Oh,
Petrosaur.
Freya Stark, I like that.
Yeah, yeah. I think Freya's on the Discord server and might be, if it's the same Freya, is also just like barreling through the series right now, like very fast. But yeah, thanks so much. And as always, we will see you next time.